Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk to you about Authority, the second book in the Area X slash Southern Reach trilogy by VanderMeer, which I'm rereading, by the way, in preparation for the fourth book that's coming out very soon. Which, incidentally, I have an arc for, so once I'm done with these books, I'll dive straight into that. And you should see that video come out just before the book is released. But anyway, what is Authority about? So, Authority, there's a shift in focus given how Annihilation was with a story that essentially happened over the span of 2 days and its focus. Authority was a bit of a departure in that the focus shifts from the expedition to the Southern Reach itself, which is the organization that sends out the expeditions, and it maintains in a lot of way it maintains just this atmospheric quality to it, but it also escalates things dramatically for the overall story. So anyway, specifically, what is Authority about? So with the disappearance and the presumed death of the former director, Control, codename Control, is dispatched to become the new director of the Southern Reach, and pretty much as soon as he steps into the door, he's faced with antagonism from the assistant director, who's extremely loyal to the previous director. Um, what happened to that director is revealed pretty early on. I still won't spoil it, but it was it sets the stage for things that come after. Anyway, more about that just now. So Control, he assumes the directorship, and he's immediately in conflict with the assistant director. Like, the majority of this book is the two of them clashing over office politics and like the most trivial crap ever. But the new job is anything but a walk in the park, because Control he has to juggle the expectations of Central, and not just that, he has to deal with an organization where the corporate culture is pretty it's pretty depressed, because they send out expedition after expedition that just fails, or in different ways. It's an organization that started out rich in resources and importance, that has since reduced, and they've slowly become cannibalized by other organizations, with those same resources that they initially had being given elsewhere, as the threat of Area X as a clear and present danger has slowly reduced over time. So he has the basically organization with relatively low morale to deal with, on top of the antagonism of the assistant director, who's carrying a heavy torch for the previous director before him, and is determined to fight him in any way, shape, and form. And then, as if all of that isn't enough, he also has to deal with the members of the 12th expedition, the expedition that was covered in Annihilation, who have returned different. So, yeah. Like I mentioned, this book, it's a very different style and feel from Annihilation. Like, this one, it's because the focus is Southern Reach, which is very much an organization with petty politics and all of that, and on top of that, there's the politics of Control and his relationship with Central and all of that. The focus is different, and for a large part of the book, it just has a different vibe to it than Annihilation did. Annihilation had this tension to it, like you were just waiting for the ball to drop in Annihilation. Not so much this one. In this one, it was kind of a drag down, pound out, and as Control tried to get his feet under him, essentially. And honestly, the guy he's not super competent, so he's constantly on the back foot. Which, I mean, given he's also new, that's kind of expected. But he's constantly on the back foot because of the microaggressions from the assistant director, and all of that. But this book, it also shows just how much range and depth VanderMeer has as a writer, because, like I said, it's a very different type of book, a very different feel, at least for the initial get-go, and VanderMeer captures all of that. Like, if you've ever been in like a corporate setting and you had to deal with just people being petty idiots, that's kind of the vibe that's captured at the start of this book. And then there's a liberal splash of weirdness that's seeded in throughout the book as Control begins to learn about Area X and see some of the ways in which the Southern Reach operates, some of the things that happen within it. It's a book that expands our understanding of the entire shebang in general, because we get a little bit more information about the expeditions and why they operate under the protocols that they do, and why they function as they do. Why a lot of the one of my things with Annihilation was that the expedition, it had very strict rules on how it operated, and in this book we understand how these rules came to be in the first place. Like what were some of the triggering events that led to it then. And then there's just these weird, these oddball mysteries that are seeded throughout it. Like a lot of it is Control also going through the previous director's documentation and that kind of thing, and trying to understand where they were and why they were thinking about the things that they were thinking, and what basically where their headspace was at. And on top of that, he had his own issues to deal with Central, which, as the story unfolds, we realize that it's not as clear cut as it first seems with him. This entire thing isn't clear cut. In a similar way that the first book occurred over the span of 2 days, this book, it actually occurs over the span of a week. And honestly, things really pop off. Like, as much as it has a slow start, it has a slow burn that slowly escalates as things go by, as Control dives deeper and deeper into just the strangeness of Area X and the strangeness that has infiltrated Southern Reach as a response to having to make sense of Area X. And we find out some really weird about some really weird things that Southern Reach has tried in the past, which do play a part in the future in the book. Like there's one particular experiment I remember distinctly because it did crop up back in the third book. So like the details here, in the same way that things seemed a bit fluid in Annihilation, that fluidity in terms of like timeline and that kind of thing, it's very lightly touched on here in Authority, because like some of the things that they talk about, the anachronisms and these kind of things, they do play a part moving forward, and they make more sense in the third book. So it made sense to pay attention to them here. But yeah, like what else do I really want to talk about? I think this book was just a good follow-up. Like, it's unique in its own way. Its focus is different. The story that it wants to tell is different. It provides us a different view of the events surrounding Area X, which works out pretty well. Like, our understanding of the entire thing deepens at the same time that more mystery is created around it. Like, VanderMeer is not a guy who answers all the questions. If you're looking for a neat wrap up and closure here, these are not the books for you. But what he does, like a lot of the weirdness that his novels have, is not necessarily in what he depicts, but in how he depicts it, how he captures just these unusual events and unusual things. And sometimes they're they're not strange, it's just that the way the essence that he imbues in them. Like, there's one scene in particular where Control is investigating the behavior of one employee, and honestly, it leads to, for me personally, what of these two books, it leads to absolutely the most creepy scene ever. And when you get to it, you will know it. You will know who, and you will know who I'm talking about. And you will know exactly the moment that I'm talking about. Like, it's nuts. Like I said at the start of this, VanderMeer shows that he has skill and he has range in just how he captures things in this book. And not just that, but in shifting the focus so dramatically compared to how the focus was in Annihilation, but still packing quite a punch in terms of the weirdness and the strange feeling that he's able to impart on you. I think I'm looking back at my notes, and honestly I think I caught everything that I wanted to talk about in this book. There is the ending, which honestly it comes on quite rapidly given the way that this book flowed. It feels like it happened in the blink of an eye. Things do escalate quite dramatically, and as I mentioned like this book, it does expand the it does expand the stakes of the story overall. So yeah, that that kind of left me excited to just dive straight into the final book, which is Acceptance, which is exactly what I did. Like, I already, before I even took the time to stop and just make some notes and sit down and film this video, I already started Acceptance. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that's all I have to say about Authority. Like, a brilliant follow-up, a very different follow-up to Annihilation, a very different type of story, but one that just works, one that just fits well with the trilogy as a whole. And if you're a fan of the first book, absolutely no reason not to dive straight into this one and keep reading, because these books, things just get better and better as you go. And that's all I have to say about Authority. If you made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.